The crystalline spires of New Eden Colony pierced the lavender sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces reflecting the light of the binary stars that bathed this world in eternal twilight. Commander Zara Hayes stood at the viewport of her ship, the Stellar Wanderer, watching as the automated docking system guided her vessel into port. 15 years had passed since she'd last seen these spires, since she'd run away to join the Deep Space Corps rather than face the emptiness her father's disappearance had left behind. The docking clamps engaged with a familiar shudder. Zara checked her reflection in the viewport surface. At 35, she cut an impressive figure in her black DSC uniform, silver commander's bars glinting on her collar. Her dark skin had taken on a slightly ashen tone from too many years in artificial gravity, and faint lines had begun to form at the corners of her eyes. But it was the haunted look in those eyes that concerned her most, the same look she'd seen in her father's gaze before he vanished. "Welcome to New Eden Colony," the port's AI chirped. "Please proceed to customs for processing." Zara gathered her few belongings. 15 years of deep space exploration had taught her to travel light, and made her way down the ship's ramp. The spaceport hadn't changed much, still the same blend of human utilitarian architecture and flowing Etherean design that had characterized the first joint colony between their species. As she approached customs, a tall figure detached itself from the shadows near the security checkpoint. Zara's breath caught in her throat. She would have recognized that silvery skin and those bioluminescent markings anywhere, even if their pattern had matured into something more complex and elegant with age. "Theron," she whispered, the name feeling both foreign and achingly familiar on her tongue. Theron Valthor, her childhood friend and now, according to her intelligence briefing, head of planetary security, stepped into the light. His silver eyes studied her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. The gangly teenager she remembered had grown into his heritage, nearly 7 feet tall with the characteristic ethereal beauty of the Etherian race. His security uniform, a seamless blend of dark fabric and living crystal, highlighted the powerful build that years of service had given him. "Welcome home, little star," he said, using the nickname he'd given her when they were children watching the binary stars set together. His voice had deepened, taking on the musical quality adult Etherians were known for. "Though I suspect this isn't a social call." Zara tensed. "You always could read me too well, Theron. Your father's disappearance. It wasn't a question. I wondered how long it would take you to come back and investigate yourself. You know something." Zara stepped closer, noting how the bioluminescent patterns on his skin pulsed slightly faster, a sign of emotional response in Etherians that she'd learned to read during their shared childhood. "What aren't you telling me, Theron?" He glanced around the spaceport, his expression unreadable. "Not here. The walls have ears, and some secrets are too dangerous for public spaces." He held out his hand, his silver palm facing upward in the traditional Etherian greeting between equals. "Walk with me, Zara. Let me show you how the colony has changed." Zara hesitated for just a moment before placing her hand in his. The contact sent a shock through her system. Etherian skin contained bioelectric sensors that created a subtle connection between their kind, but the effect on humans was more pronounced. She saw Theron's eyes widen slightly at the contact, suggesting he felt it too. "Your father," he said softly as they walked, her hand still in his, was investigating something before he disappeared. Something about our shared history that certain parties would prefer stayed buried." "What kind of shared history?" Theron led her to a transport pod, one marked with security override codes. The kind that predates official first contact by several thousand years. He helped her into the pod, then took the seat beside her. "The kind that suggests everything we think we know about humans and Etherians might be wrong." As the pod lifted off, carrying them toward the heart of the colony, Zara studied her childhood friend's profile. "You're afraid," she realized, recognizing the subtle flicker in his bioluminescent patterns. "We both should be," he replied, turning to meet her gaze. "But you deserve to know the truth about your father. And maybe He paused, his patterns shifting to a deeper hue she'd never seen before. Maybe it's time for both our peoples to remember what we once were to each other. The transport pod soared between the crystal spires, and Zara felt the weight of destiny settling onto her shoulders. She'd come seeking answers about her father, but she was beginning to suspect she'd stumbled onto something far larger, something that could change everything for both their species. And sitting beside her was the one person she'd never been able to forget, the friend who'd haunted her dreams during those long years in deep space. As if reading her thoughts, Theron's hand tightened slightly around hers. "Do you remember the promise we made?" he asked softly. "The night before you left?" Zara's heart skipped a beat. "That we'd always find our way back to each other." The transport pod banked toward a secure sector of the colony she'd never seen before. "Some promises," Theron said, his voice carrying a weight of meaning that made her shiver, "transcend time, space, and even species." As they descended toward their destination, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that she was falling into something much bigger than herself. But with Theron beside her, his hand warm in hers, she found she didn't mind at all. The secure facility Theron brought them to wasn't on any official colony maps. Nestled within the base of the largest crystal spire, its entrance seamlessly blended with the natural formation. As they passed through layers of security, Zara noticed the subtle mix of human and Etherian technology, a combination she'd never seen before. "Welcome to the archives," Theron said, leading her into a vast chamber filled with holographic displays and artifacts suspended in stasis fields. "Or as your father called it, the truth chamber." Zara's breath caught as she recognized her father's handwriting on numerous digital notes floating in the air. "He worked here? With you? For the past 5 years." Theron's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a deep blue, a color of regret. "I recruited him after he discovered something in the outer ruins. Something that changed everything we thought we knew." He approached a central console, his long fingers dancing over the controls. A holographic image materialized, ancient cave paintings that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. "These were discovered in the ruins of what we thought was the first Etherian settlement on this world. Your father was helping catalog the find when he noticed something strange." Zara stepped closer, studying the images. They showed figures that were clearly Etherian, their distinctive height and bioluminescent patterns rendered in surprising detail. But alongside them were unmistakably human figures, working together, building together, living together. According to the dating stamp, the paintings were over 10,000 years old. "That's impossible," Zara whispered. "Official first contact was barely 3 centuries ago." "That's what the histories tell us." Theron moved behind her, close enough that she could feel the electric charge of his presence. "But history, it seems, can be rewritten. Look closer at the central image." Zara leaned in, and her heart nearly stopped. The painting showed an Etherian and a human in an intimate embrace, their bodies intertwined. But it was the child between them that drew her attention, a being that seemed to be neither fully human nor fully Etherian, but a perfect blend of both. "Hybrid offspring," she breathed. "But that's impossible?" Theron's voice held a note of dark amusement. "According to modern science, our species are too different to produce viable offspring. And yet." He activated another display, showing complex genetic sequences. "Your father found something else in those ruins. Ancient genetic samples that proved not only was hybridization possible, it was once common." Zara turned to face him, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. "What happened? Why was this knowledge lost?" "That's what your father was trying to figure out when he disappeared." Theron's patterns pulsed with anxiety. "Someone went to extraordinary lengths to erase this part of our history. To ensure our species would believe themselves fundamentally incompatible." A memory surfaced, her father's voice, the night before he vanished. "Sometimes the greatest threats to peace are the lies we tell to maintain it." "Show me everything," Zara demanded. Every piece of evidence, every theory, she broke off as alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Theron's patterns flared with alarm. Security breach. Someone's found us. His hands flew over the console, initiating emergency protocols. Zara, there's something else you need to know. About us, about why we were always drawn to each other as children. The facility's lights dimmed as security lockdowns engaged. In the ethereal glow of emergency lighting and Theron's own bioluminescence, Zara saw something in his eyes she'd never dared hope for. Your father discovered that certain human and Etherian bloodlines still carry the ancient hybrid genetics. Dormant, but present. His hand found hers in the darkness. Our unusual ability to sense each other, the way we've always been connected, it's not just emotional. It's genetic memory. The sound of boots on metal echoed through the corridors outside. Theron pulled her closer, his silver eyes intense. Your father wasn't just researching our past, Zara. He was trying to unlock it. To reawaken what was buried in our DNA. Why? Zara asked, even as part of her already knew the answer. Because something is coming. Something that threatened both our species before, that forced us apart to survive. And your father believed the only way to face it was to remember what we once were to each other. He cupped her face with his free hand, the touch sending electric shivers through her body. What we could be again. The facility's doors groaned under some massive impact. Whoever was coming for them had brought serious hardware. Trust me? Theron asked, his patterns swirling with colors she'd never seen before, hope, fear, and something deeper. Zara squeezed his hand. Always. He smiled, reminding her of the boy who'd once shown her secret paths through the crystal forests. Then it's time I showed you what else your father left behind. He pressed his palm to a hidden panel, and the floor beneath them began to move. And why some people would kill to keep us from learning the truth about our shared destiny. As they descended into hidden depths beneath the archives, Zara felt the weight of millennia of buried history pressing down on them. But with Theron beside her, his genetic memory calling to hers across eons of enforced separation, she was ready to face whatever secrets awaited them in the darkness below. The hidden chamber beneath the archives stretched impossibly deep into New Eden's bedrock, its walls lined with a material that seemed to absorb both light and sound. As Zara and Theron emerged from the emergency lift, only his bioluminescence provided illumination, casting shifting patterns across ancient machinery that defied classification as either human or Etherian technology. What is this place? Zara whispered, her voice still seeming too loud in the profound silence. Your father called it the Nexus. Theron's patterns pulsed with anticipation as he led her toward a central platform. It's older than human and Etherian civilization combined. Watch. He placed his palm on a crystalline pedestal. His bioluminescent patterns suddenly aligned into geometric shapes Zara had never seen before, and the chamber hummed to life. Holographic displays materialized around them, but unlike anything in the archives above, these images were crisp, perfect, as if they were windows into the past itself. Greetings, children of the synthesis, a voice echoed through the chamber, neither male nor female, neither human nor Etherian. A figure materialized before them, a being that combined characteristics of both species in a way that seemed hauntingly natural. An AI? Zara asked, fascinated. I am Echo, the figure replied, custodian of the true history. I have waited 12,347 years for one such as you to return, carriers of the original genetic markers. The images around them shifted, showing a civilization more advanced than anything in recorded history. Humans and Etherians lived together in vast crystal cities that stretched into the stars themselves. But there was something else, shadows moving at the edges of the images, suggestions of another presence watching, waiting. We were one people, Echo explained, its form shifting subtly between human and Etherian aspects. The synthesis was our greatest achievement, the perfect blend of human adaptability and Etherian biological technology. But they saw us as a threat. They? Zara felt Theron's hand find hers in the darkness. The Shapers. New images appeared, beings of pure energy, incomprehensible in their true form. They had seeded both human and Etherian life, expecting us to develop along separate paths. Our union was unexpected. Undesired. Theron's patterns flashed with sudden understanding. The genetic incompatibility between our species, it's artificial? A failsafe, Echo confirmed. When they couldn't prevent our peoples from coming together naturally, they modified both species at a genetic level, forcing an evolutionary split. But they couldn't completely erase what we were. The potential remains dormant in certain bloodlines. Zara's mind raced. Like ours? That's what my father discovered. Daniel Hayes was brilliant. Echo's form flickered with what might have been sadness. He discovered how to identify the dormant genes, how to potentially reverse the changes. But he also found evidence that the Shapers never left. They still watch, still manipulate from the shadows. A distant explosion rocked the chamber. Dust and crystal shards rained from above. Speaking of shadows, Theron's patterns shifted to warning colors. We have company. Echo, show her what her father found about the recent genetic modifications. New data streams appeared, showing subtle but systematic changes in both human and Etherian DNA over the past century. They're still keeping us apart, Zara realized, horror dawning. Wherever we start to grow closer as species, these changes appear in the next generation. But they missed something. Theron pulled her closer, his silver eyes intense. The dormant genes in bloodlines like ours? They're becoming active again. Your father theorized that prolonged exposure between compatible individuals could trigger a reversal of the artificial separation. The way he said it made Zara's skin tingle with bioelectric awareness. Every point of contact between them seemed to hum with potential energy. Is that what's happening to us? Your proximity is accelerating the process, Echo confirmed. The original genetic pattern is reasserting itself. You are becoming what your ancestors were, what they were meant to be. Another explosion, closer this time. Emergency lights flashed through the chamber. Multiple breach teams converging, Theron reported, his security training taking over. Both human and Etherian forces. Someone really doesn't want this truth getting out. Your father left a failsafe. Echo's form began to fade. A way to broadcast the truth to every colony in both territories. But the price? The AI's image flickered with concern. The energy required would reveal this facility to the Shapers themselves. Where is he? Zara demanded. Is he still alive? He lives, hidden where they cannot reach. The coordinates are encoded in your shared genetic memory. Together, you can access them, but Echo's form destabilized as something massive impacted the chamber above. Choose wisely, children of two worlds. The truth could unite your peoples, but it could also tear them apart. Sometimes secrets are buried for a reason. The AI vanished, leaving them in the dim glow of Theron's bioluminescence. He turned to her, his patterns swirling with colors that spoke of fear, hope, and something deeper. I can feel it, he whispered, pressing his forehead to hers. The changes in my DNA, responding to yours. Whatever happens next, Zara, we're proof that our peoples were meant to be together. The chamber shuddered again. They could hear voices now, getting closer. Together then, Zara said, feeling the truth of it in her very cells. Whatever comes next, whatever these Shapers threw at us, we face it together. Like our ancestors before us, Theron agreed, and in the darkness of humanity's buried past, their lips met in a kiss that sent bioelectric shivers through them both, a kiss that felt like remembering something their DNA had never truly forgotten. The ancient access tunnels beneath the Nexus twisted through New Eden's crystalline bedrock like arteries of a forgotten giant. Zara and Theron moved swiftly through the darkness, his bioluminescence dimmed to its lowest output to avoid detection. Every few minutes, the ground would shake with distant explosions as their pursuers attempted to blast their way down. "Focus on the genetic memory," Theron whispered, his hand steady in hers as they navigated another junction. "Your father encoded the coordinates into our shared DNA. We just have to remember." Zara closed her eyes as they ran, letting muscle memory and something deeper guide her steps. Images flashed through her mind, star patterns viewed from unfamiliar angles, crystalline formations that pulsed with their own inner light, and beneath it all, a steady pull toward the forbidden zone, she gasped, eyes snapping open. "That's where he is. The radioactive wastes beyond the northern settlement." Theron's patterns flickered with recognition. "Of course. The radiation interferes with both standard scanning technology and the Shaper's ability to detect genetic signatures. Your father's brilliant." A blast much closer than the others sent crystals raining down around them. Through the dust, filtered voices echoed. "Target biosignatures detected. Convergence in 3 minutes. Team 2, deploy sonic disruptors. Remember, we need the hybrid genetics intact." Theron pulled Zara into a narrow side tunnel, pressing her against the crystal wall. In the dim glow of his bioluminescence, she could see new patterns forming across his skin, more complex, more human-like in their organization. "The changes are accelerating," he murmured, touching his forehead to hers. "I can feel your genetic signature as clearly as my own now." "There." He paused, searching for words, harmonizing. Zara felt it too, a deep resonance between them that went beyond physical attraction or even their childhood bond. Their very DNA was reaching across millennia of enforced separation, trying to remember what it once was. "You realize what this means," she whispered, running her fingers along the evolving patterns on his skin. "If we can change, others can too. The Shaper's modifications aren't permanent. Which is exactly why they want us eliminated." Theron's expression hardened. "We're living proof their control isn't absolute." Another explosion rocked the tunnel. This one felt different, more focused, more controlled. A familiar voice echoed through the darkness. "Commander Hayes. Director Valthor. This is High Council Executor Wren. You've accessed classified information that threatens the stability of both our civilizations. Surrender now, and you'll be treated with the respect your positions deserve." Zara felt Theron tense. "Wren," he growled. "I should have known. He's been the Shaper's primary agent in the Council for decades." "Both councils," Zara corrected, pieces clicking into place. "The coincidental policies that kept our peoples at arm's length, the subtle encouragement of xenophobic elements in both societies. All carefully orchestrated," Theron confirmed. "Your father found evidence of their influence stretching back centuries. Every time our peoples grew too close, there would be a convenient crisis, a diplomatic incident, or a new scientific study showing our fundamental incompatibility." The tunnel trembled again, but this time Zara recognized the pattern, a very specific frequency of vibration. "Wait," she grabbed Theron's arm. "That's my father's old emergency signal." 3 long pulses, too short. They pressed their ears to the crystal wall. After a moment, the vibration repeated. "He's close," Theron's patterns swirled with excitement. "These tunnels must connect to his hiding place." But why signal now, after all this time? Because time's running out, Zara realized. Echo said the failsafe would reveal this facility to the Shapers themselves. What if they're already on their way? As if in answer, a new tremor passed through the tunnels, different from the explosions or her father's signal. It felt older, deeper, like the planet itself was shuddering in recognition of something ancient and terrible. "They're coming," Theron's patterns shifted to colors Zara had never seen before, primal warning hues that spoke to something in her modified genes. The Shapers themselves. We need to reach your father before. The crystal wall beside them suddenly liquefied, flowing away to reveal a hidden chamber. In its center stood Daniel Hayes, his face lined with years of hidden knowledge, but his eyes bright with purpose. "Dad," Zara breathed. "My brilliant girl," he smiled, then nodded to Theron. "And the boy who never gave up on her. Come quickly. There's so much more you need to know, and so little time left to decide." "Decide what?" Zara asked, even as Theron pulled her into the chamber, the crystal wall re-solidifying behind them. Daniel Hayes gestured to a massive device that hummed with familiar energy, the same technology they'd seen in the Nexus. "Whether to finish what our ancestors started," he said grimly, "or let the Shapers continue their great experiment in separation. But choose quickly." He looked up at the chamber's ceiling, where the crystal had begun to pulse with otherworldly light. The hidden chamber thrummed with ancient power as otherworldly light pulsed through the crystalline ceiling. Daniel Hayes worked frantically at the controls of the massive device, its surfaces alive with swirling patterns that matched the increasingly complex designs emerging on Theron's skin. "The device isn't just a transmitter," Daniel explained, his fingers dancing across crystal interfaces. "It's a genetic resonator. The same technology the Shapers used to separate our species can be used to reverse the process, not just for you two, but for everyone with the dormant genes." "How many?" Zara asked, helping her father calibrate the machinery while Theron secured the chamber's entrance. "Millions," Daniel's eyes gleamed. The potential for reunion was too powerful to completely suppress. "It's been sleeping in our DNA, waiting for the right moment to reawaken." The chamber shuddered as something massive shifted above them. The crystalline walls began to sing with harmonics that made Zara's teeth ache and sent Theron's bioluminescent patterns into chaotic swirls. "They're trying to communicate," Theron grimaced, pressing his hands against the walls. "The Shapers, I can feel them in the crystal matrix. They're angry." As if in response, the air itself seemed to thicken, taking on forms that defied human and Etherian perception alike. Beings of pure energy and possibility manifested around them, their presence both beautiful and terrible. "Children of the synthesis," the thought crashed through their minds like a tidal wave. "You meddle with forces beyond your comprehension." Daniel stood straight, facing the ethereal entities without fear. "We comprehend more than you wanted us to. You didn't separate our species to protect us, you did it because you were afraid of what we could become together. Order must be maintained," the Shapers resonated. "Each species must follow its designated path." "Why?" Zara challenged, moving to stand beside her father. "Because we exceeded your expectations? Because when humans and Etherians came together naturally, we created something even you couldn't predict?" The energy beings swirled in agitation, their forms becoming more distinct. Zara could now see suggestions of faces within them, thousands of faces, human and Etherian and everything in between, as if they were composed of countless absorbed consciousnesses. "You were meant to evolve separately," they insisted. "Each species developing unique strengths. The synthesis disrupted the grand design." "No," Theron stepped forward, his patterns now so complex they seemed to echo the Shapers' own energy formations. "The synthesis was the grand design. Evolution isn't about following predetermined paths, it's about adapting, combining, becoming more than what came before." He reached for Zara's hand, and when their fingers intertwined, bioelectric energy crackled between them. The genetic changes that had been accelerating in their bodies suddenly synchronized, creating a feedback loop that resonated with the ancient device. "Look at them," Daniel urged the Shapers. "Really look. This isn't some aberration to be corrected. This is love, finding a way across every barrier you tried to put between them. It's happening again, all across both our territories. You can't stop it this time." The chamber's crystals began to pulse in rhythm with Zara and Theron's combined genetic signature. The resonator device responded, its energy building toward something momentous. If you activate the device, the Shapers warned, you will reveal the truth to all. Chaos will follow. Wars may erupt. Societies may collapse. Or, Zara countered, people will finally understand why they've always felt drawn to each other despite every artificial barrier. Why human and Etherian communities that live closely together report increased fertility, decreased illness, and longer lifespans. We make each other better, stronger. The time of separation is over, Theron declared. His free hand reached for the resonator's activation crystal. We choose unity. The Shapers surged forward, but at that moment, Zara placed her hand over Theron's on the crystal. Their combined genetic resonance connected with the device, and pure energy exploded outward in an expanding wave that passed through walls, bodies, and even the Shapers themselves. Throughout New Eden Colony, humans and Etherians stopped in their tracks as dormant genes awakened. Old prejudices dissolved in the face of cellular recognition. Centuries of artificial separation began to unravel. The Shapers' forms wavered, their power over the material realm weakening as their great experiment came to an end. You cannot comprehend the forces you have unleashed, they pulsed one final time. Maybe not, Daniel smiled. But we'll discover them together, as we were always meant to. The energy beings faded, their long vigil over humanity and the Etherians finally ending. In their absence, the chamber's crystals settled into a soft, steady glow. Zara turned to Theron, seeing him clearly for the first time with her awakened genetics. He was neither purely Etherian nor a hybrid, but something gloriously unique, a promise of what their peoples could become together. What now? She whispered. Theron's patterns shifted to colors that spoke of love, hope, and infinite possibility. Now, my little star, we help our peoples remember how to dance among the stars together. After all, he smiled, touching his forehead to hers, we have 10,000 years of catching up to do. Above them, through the crystal spires of New Eden Colony, the binary stars continued their eternal dance, casting their light on a world where two peoples had finally remembered they were one, and love had found its way home across the stars.